His voice hit before his face did. "Why don't you stop talking to my wife?" That laugh, too sharp, too performative, like he'd practiced it in a mirror, sliced through the quiet pocket of space I'd carved for myself near the back of the reception hall. I made it through most of the FinTech summit unnoticed, sipping flat champagne, answering no more than a dozen words at a time. But then she appeared. Elena, in charcoal gray, silk-lined, sharp-shouldered, CEO now. Of course she was. I wasn't trying to make a scene. I wasn't trying to start anything. I'd seen her across the floor, waited until the cluster of her colleagues thinned, and approached out of habit more than anything. Maybe just a handshake, a nod, some adult version of closure. Instead, I got him. She didn't move, didn't blink, just let him step between us like a bouncer on autopilot. "She doesn't speak dropout anymore," he added, louder now. That was for the crowd nearby. I looked at her, not him. "You're right," I said. "Let's keep it professional." I didn't wait for a reply. Walked out through a sea of name tags and lanyards, past some junior VP who recognized me just a little too late, and out into the night where the cold at least had some honesty to it. The lights of the hotel flickered on the black gloss of a town car hood, and by the time I stepped inside, I'd already opened the encrypted line. "Close the account," I said. "Transfer everything. Full exit tonight." If this story hits something in you, subscribe. Like it too. Most just listen and scroll, but this one stays with you. Back in my suite, I took off the heels I'd never liked, set them neatly by the armchair, and opened the folder I'd brought for a different reason, the one marked JAW Class C Holdings. The contents hadn't changed in years. 3 shell structures, 11 accounts split across legacy funds and 2 jurisdictions, all under the institution she now ran, and all still quietly mine. He wouldn't know any of that, but she did. I remembered the first time she saw the balances. Her fingers had hovered over the edge of the page like the ink might burn. "You trust me with this?" she asked back then, soft, surprised. "No," I said, "I trust the contracts." Because even then I'd known she was sharp, ambitious, calculated when she wanted to be, but she was never loyal, not the way people like me require. And I didn't build my legacy on feelings. I built it on redundancy, on language buried so deep in the compliance stack that even her best attorneys would miss it on the first read. Still, I'd let it sit, inertia maybe, or some part of me still pretending the past didn't deserve a ledger. That part was gone now. By the time she'd finish her final glass of whatever vintage she was pretending to like, the request would hit her operations desk, flagged under Clause 9, no renewal, full liquidation. Let them laugh now. Because the thing about legacy clients like me, we don't yell, we don't threaten, we just move, quietly, fully, and once we go, we don't come back. He wouldn't have recognized the shape of that money, even if it lit up on his dashboard in neon. To him, I was just some name his wife used to mention, a footnote, the dropout with potential. Whatever story she told him, it clearly didn't include the part where I spent 15 years building distribution models most hedge funds now copy without realizing the origin code had my name in the header. But she knew, she always knew. That's what made her pause the first time she saw it. Not the number, though 640 million makes most people blink, but the silence of it. No press, no foundation galas, no yachts named after someone's daughter, just long-standing positions, nested LLCs, staggered jurisdictions, structured for discretion, designed never to move unless I said so. She found it buried in the private client books the year she became CEO. The portfolio had been there for years, untouched, low friction, zero escalation, the kind of account banks pray never leaves. She sent me a message. "Did you mean to leave this here?" I didn't reply right away. Eventually I called. "You trust me with this?" she asked. There was a tremor under the surface, maybe awe, maybe something else. "No," I said, "I trust the contracts." It wasn't kindness, it was habit. The structure was stable. And for a time, so was she. I remember watching her present at a closed-door policy roundtable a few years back. Same tailored edge, same voice she used in arguments, only softer. She moved like someone trying not to remember the floors she used to scrub just to get near these circles. I didn't approach her then either. I just let the account sit. Maybe that's what got under her skin most, that I never used it to win her back, never flexed, just left it there like a reminder that no matter how high she climbed, some towers were built by other hands. But now that scaffolding was coming down, The exit protocols required a triple verification trail, one in Zurich, one in Boston, one in the Caymans, all queued within 4 hours of my call. By morning, the first of 3 terminals would light up her risk team's monitors. She'd recognize the code, not because of me, but because she helped write it. That was the point, because money like that doesn't just leave. It signals to boards, to rating agencies, to any private wealth team worth a damn. It says, someone important has stopped believing in the system. And this time, the system was her. He wouldn't understand that kind of quiet. He probably thought wealth made noise, bought tables, closed restaurants, bragged on panels. What he didn't realize was, real money doesn't speak. It exits. It took less than a day. Her dashboard lit red at 6:42 a.m., internal classification code 9A. Treasury flagged it as a high-impact client action, non-renewal, full withdrawal, under a clause no one invoked unless it was serious. Clause 9 wasn't just a standard termination line. It was a burn clean exit. Every instrument, every link, every shadow of institutional entanglement severed in one coordinated sweep. Her assistant, that kid Miles, who always triple-checked things like he was trying to prove he belonged in the room, sent it with a one-line note. Thought you'd want to see. She clicked the file, watched it open. Client J.A. Ward assets under management, 40,000 directive, clause 9 exit initiated disposition, full withdrawal, no renewal, no contact, no soft offboarding, no we appreciate your time with us. Just done. The room didn't tilt, not yet, but her posture did. There was a protocol for this, of course. There always is, but this wasn't protocol. This was personal. She dialed me before finishing the file. Twice. I saw the number, didn't touch it, it rang out. A few minutes later, a text. Was this about him, the man who mocked me in front of half her industry, the man who didn't even know what a Class C lockout clause was until someone probably explained it to him with diagrams? I didn't reply. So she tried again. Can we talk? Please, just 5 minutes. The silence between us wasn't anger, it wasn't drama, it was arithmetic. She knew what that account meant. What it symbolized. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about the trust she'd quietly relied on long after the marriage ended, the unspoken credit she kept drawing on, assuming the balance would never drop below 0. Now she was watching the overdraft post in real time. Her third message came in later that night. I didn't know he'd say that. If I had. She didn't finish the sentence. Because that's what finally cracked through. Not that he spoke out of turn, but that I didn't respond, that I didn't need to. There's a kind of clarity that only silence delivers. And in that moment, she understood something her board hadn't, something her husband hadn't, something even she had ignored until now. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a verdict. And verdicts, once issued, don't negotiate. The request came in under the heading Courtesy Debrief, scheduled for 30 minutes, polite phrasing, neutral tone, the kind of corporate outreach that pretends nothing's on fire. She was trying to manage the optics. Her assistant emailed my firm first, some template line about ensuring continuity across institutional relationships. My partner flagged it to me with one sentence beneath it. You want this? Or should I decline? I sent back one word, decline. We didn't take meetings to soothe egos, and this wasn't a negotiation. Instead, I opened our internal platform and clicked into the instruments tracker, every bond, derivative, nested product, advisory pipeline, and linked vendor agreement that connected to her bank. Then I clicked the option most people overlook, request exit audit. It wasn't dramatic, no flash, no drama, just 3 words on a quiet screen and a clause no one ever invoked, but it was valid, enforceable, and as the originating client, my full right. Per the original custodial agreement, ironically, one she herself had reviewed years ago, I was entitled to a comprehensive audit of every mechanism, agreement, and flow touching any of my holdings within the institution, even dormant ones. No one ever used it, not because they couldn't, just because the kind of people with that power usually prefer to exit clean. But I wasn't most people. Within 48 hours, their internal teams received the system-generated trigger. Client Ward, custodial exit audit initiated. Compliance clock started. Their Treasury Division, legal counsel, and data integrity officers all copied. The kind of trigger that pulls resources, halts new allocations, and demands 30-day data trails. To the untrained eye, it looked like protocol. To her, it was a scalpel. She'd wanted a smooth de-escalation, a quick call, a chance to frame the narrative before the board started asking harder questions. Instead, she now had 6 departments scrambling to produce files no one had touched in years, systems being reopened, metadata being re-verified, contracts being pulled and reread line by line, especially the old ones, the ones with her signature on them. That was the part that landed first, because nothing exposes structural dependency like a well-timed audit, especially one you never expected to be enforced. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't chaos, it was process. Cold, clean, and irreversible. By the end of the week, I got a forwarded email from one of our compliance leads. Subject line, board exit audit, elevated to executive council. In the body, a short line stood out. We were under the impression this clause was ceremonial. That was her mistake. Some clauses aren't ceremonial, some are just waiting. The board didn't summon her with an official memo. That would have made it easier. It came as a tap on the glass just before the Friday strategy session. Chairwoman Liu, quiet, precise, never wasted a syllable. Elena, she said. A word? They walked the length of the corridor in silence, not to a meeting room, to the back office near Treasury's analytics wall, where mistakes tend to echo louder. 3 others waited inside, the deputy risk officer, one of the legal partners, and the head of capital integrity, who didn't even bother to look up from the tablet in her hands. Leo gestured to the seat, no pleasantries. Why did a legacy client suddenly liquidate? Elena crossed her legs. We're seeing waves of asset mobility across high net segments. Some of it's just timing, volatility, rebalancing, personal shifts. She didn't flinch when she said it. She'd been in rooms like this before. Gave 100 variations of that answer in her time. But this one didn't land. Lou's brow rose just slightly. Didn't he name you as key custodian on the original intake form? That one took the air out of the room. Elena hesitated. A beat too long, then. That was years ago. But still in effect, said the legal partner, not looking up. His structure didn't shift. His directives were logged under your custodial profile. That's now a governance vulnerability. Another voice chimed in, capital integrity this time. No judgment, just numbers. The exit triggered a counterparty review. It's bad. His holdings were entangled with several of our quiet float products. Redeployment is stalled. Liquidity buffers are tighter than we forecasted. Elena opened her mouth, closed it. They were already halfway down the disaster chain. It wasn't just about him pulling out. It was about how cleanly he did it. How completely. No renegotiation, no phased exit. Just a full surgical removal that yanked 6 hidden dependencies into the light. Now they were exposed. Any indication this was coordinated with other clients? Someone asked. Elena shook her head. Not that I'm aware of. Not yet, she didn't say, because the thought had crossed her mind too. If he walked, who else might follow? The silence stretched. Finally, Liu stood. Prepare a supplemental risk disclosure for the quarterly update. And, Elena, pull your personal history with this client. I want a full readout. Any prior conflicts, non-disclosure events, informal agreements, all of it. If we have a perception issue, I'd rather surface it than let it fester. Elena nodded, stood too quickly. Her hand brushed the edge of the chair. She kept her expression neutral until the hallway. But inside she felt it cracking. Not because of what she'd lost, but because she couldn't spin it, couldn't predict the next move. He hadn't just exited, he'd left her holding the blind spots. We met at the kind of place designed to impress without looking like it tried. Tall glass, indirect lighting, a wine list longer than the dinner menu. She chose it. I let her. Her voicemail had been brief, strained but composed. Please, just one conversation. Neutral ground, no press, no entourage. She arrived 10 minutes early. Of course she did. Waiting at the table already, posture perfect, blazer draped just so across the back of her chair. No ring, no mention of him. Hair pulled back the way she used to wear it when she needed to look in control. It worked better back then. I sat across from her without small talk. Let the silence settle. She smiled, tight, hesitant. I didn't mean for him to speak to you that way, she said softly, hands folded like it was confession. I nodded, just once. The waiter came and went. She ordered something she wouldn't finish. I didn't bother pretending I was there for the food. Then I reached into my jacket and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. 1 page, 3 signatures, already notarized. It was clean and simple. A formal statement severing every remaining thread between her institution and any entity tied to me, directly or otherwise. No renewals, no referrals, no re-entry under alternate structuring. Full blackout clause, enforceable across jurisdictions. Signed and sealed, I said. No further contact between your institution and any of my holdings. Permanently. She didn't touch it at first, just stared like the ink might still be wet. Elijah, she started. I didn't interrupt. I just wanted to apologize, she whispered. You did, I said. And I listened. I let that sit. Now we're done. The lights flickered above us as a new party arrived at the table next door, louder, unaware. She glanced toward them like they were away out of the moment, then looked back at me. She didn't ask for another chance, didn't offer an explanation. She knew better, because this wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about grace, it was about drawing the final line. We sat in silence a little longer. She picked at the edge of her napkin, eyes down, like maybe there was a version of this dinner where something different could have been said, something clever, something redemptive. But she knew it wouldn't matter. This wasn't a wound to be dressed. This was a ledger being closed, and I'd already reconciled the balance. The memo went out just after 4 p.m., internal only. Plain text, no bold, no highlight, just enough formality to make it sound routine. Subject, data and custodial directive. Ward portfolio, action required. Per client request, all affiliated parties, contracts, and data relating to Mr. Ward are to be deleted or transferred within 7 business days, no exceptions. Contact legal for data transfer protocols. It was the kind of notice that should have passed quietly. Routine cleanup, clients come and go. But names like mine don't show up in routine memos. A junior analyst in the client data group forwarded it to a friend with the subject line, "What did the CEO do?" That friend happened to know someone on a fintech forum, one of those anonymous types who reads every SEC leak and lives for scandal in spreadsheets. By 6:30 p.m., someone posted a screenshot in a private Discord under the caption, "Ward just nuked his entire portfolio out of the institution. Anyone got context?" No one did, so they filled in the blanks. Speculation poured in. Some said regulatory conflict. Others whispered hostile acquisition. One thread suggested it was revenge, that I'd found something, some internal fraud, and walked out with my foot on the kill switch. None of it was true, but none of it mattered, because the truth was quieter and worse. The real damage wasn't in what they thought I'd done. It was in the fact that no one knew why I left. That's what made them nervous. The next morning, a headline ran in a mid-tier finance blog. Bank CEO loses billion-dollar legacy client, quiet storm or bigger fallout. They didn't use her name. They didn't need to. Insiders knew, and insiders talk. The piece wasn't accusatory, just pointed. Questions about client retention, legacy risk, custodial transitions, all dressed in the language of industry speculation. But in those circles, even a question is a red flag. Her phone probably lit up before her coffee hit the desk. By midday, the memo was recirculating, this time with call-outs, theories, archived links to a conference where we'd once shared a panel years ago. Someone even dug up a clip of her mentioning me by name. That's when the narrative shifted, from confusion to stigma, from what happened to what does he know that we don't. Her silence didn't help, because in this world, silence is a signal. And when someone like me walks away without saying a word, people notice, not because I spoke, but because I didn't. It arrived in thick stock envelopes, folded once. One page, no logo, no letterhead, just a simple serif font, signed in ink. I had them hand-delivered by courier, no email trail, no forwarded PDF to be misinterpreted or forwarded. I wasn't looking for attention, I was establishing clarity. There were only 7 recipients, the top shareholders of the fund her institution partially managed, men and women I'd known for years, some older, some newer, but all smart enough to recognize what wasn't being said. The letter was brief, centered, plain. To whom it may concern, my recent custodial exit from Olinthra Bank was procedural. No personal commentary is necessary. I remain a firm believer that governance begins with tone, and tone in this case has changed. Respectfully, J.A. Ward, no accusations, no dates, no backstory, just a signal. One sentence was all it took, because people like that don't need drama. They respond to tone. And they trust pattern recognition more than press releases. Within 48 hours, Two of them had reached out, not to me, but to each other, then to their internal compliance teams, then to a private advisor who used to work inside her shop. Questions started circulating, not confrontational, probing. Anything shifting internally we should know about? Any tone changes we should be aware of? What's the real story on the ward exit? She probably didn't even know about the letter until the third inquiry hit her investor relations lead. By then, it was already echoing. I hadn't lied. I hadn't threatened. I hadn't burned anything down. I just stated a fact. Governance begins with tone, and theirs had changed. That was enough, because reputation at that level isn't guarded by slogans or statements. It's guarded by silence that used to feel like trust until it doesn't. And once that silence shifts, you don't hear the doors closing. You just notice who isn't returning your calls. The email came in under a generic domain, not her bank's, not some personal vanity address, just a default Gmail tied to his name. Subject: I was out of line. I saw it in the morning. Let it sit unopened while I made coffee, read the FT, and walked the edge of the terrace where the fog hadn't lifted yet. When I finally opened it, there it was. Short, unsure, one paragraph trying to pass for grace. Didn't realize the history or the scale. Hope no hard feelings. There was no greeting, no signature, just those few lines, like a child tossing a stone into a lake and hoping the ripples reached something. I read it once, archived it. No reply. Then I opened our internal message system and left a standing instruction for my EA. If he contacts again, bounce it. I don't want to see it. She replied with one emoji. Understood, because that was the difference between us. He thought this was about offense. Something said in poor taste at the wrong time in front of the wrong people. He thought words were the problem, but he was never the problem. Not really. He was a symptom. The louder, emptier replacement for something she used to understand. Precision. Stillness. Wait. And when he stepped between us at that reception with his empty laugh and his puffed up ego, he didn't just insult me. He confirmed everything I already knew. That she'd moved into a world where the currency wasn't depth. It was performance. And when you perform long enough, you forget the people who built in silence. That's what his email didn't understand. There were no hard feelings. Not because I forgave him, because he was irrelevant. This wasn't his to fix. It was never about him. It was about what she chose to stand beside. And now, both of them were where they belonged, outside the boundary, beyond the reach, muted. It came in a cream envelope, no return address, hand-delivered by a service that knew better than to ask questions. I let it sit on the desk for an hour before opening it. There was no rush. Not anymore. Her handwriting hadn't changed, still tight, deliberate, half-tilted like she was always leaning toward a better version of herself. The letter was one page. You've made your point. But it hurts. Not the money. You, no apology, no argument, just a small wound dressed in ink. I read it once, no reaction, folded it along the original crease, filed it in the same drawer that held old contracts, expired keys, and the watch I wore the day we signed the prenup. Then I turned to my screen, logged in, two-factor cleared, the portfolio dashboard loaded slow, like it always did with that much under management. But the first thing I saw was all I needed, clean, fully transferred, new custodians across all jurisdictions, tiered structures intact, no carryover tags, no legacy data. Her institution wasn't listed anywhere, no more oversight, no indirect access, no leverage point, just wealth, fully mine, quiet, mobile, untethered. I let the numbers sit in front of me for a while, watched the cursor blink in the top right search bar, a single empty field, waiting, ready. That was the final balance, not in the markets, not in the headlines, not in the whispers circling her boardroom. Here, in this moment, where the past had no access to what I'd become. She'd tried to reach for closure, something soft, something mutual. But some endings don't need ceremony. Some just need separation. No echo, no flare-up, just silence where her name used to be. And that was the point.